mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show, which, in today's example, might be the only podcast where two middle-aged dads compare cancer scars and IVF bills like we're trading baseball cards. My guest today is Scott Capozza, the only full-time oncology physical therapist at Yale New Haven Health, which basically means if he gets sick, the whole cancer rehab program shuts down like Blockbuster in 2007. Scott and I share a disturbing number of things in common. We were both diagnosed in our early 20s in the 1990s. We both survived long enough to become card-carrying ARP members. We both have boy-girl twins. Both of our wives are speech therapists, and we both would like to strangle health insurance companies with our bare hands, but apparently that's now frowned upon. Scott's story is raw, funny, and painfully familiar. He was literally told when he was sick that he was otherwise healthy while wearing hearing aids, struggling to breathe, and carrying more side effects than a Cialis commercial. You're going to want to hear this one, folks. My name is Matthew Zachary. This is Out of Patience. Let's get started. Scott, I got to tell you, your cold intro to me, even though it wasn't so cold in Chicago, we kind of breezed past for a second there, was like, we have 90 things in common. Here they are. I was like, I'm hooked. I'm sold. We have to go through them one by one. The least of which, boy-girl twins.
They are boy-girl twins. They just turned 12.
So do you ever get that question, what's it like to raise twins?
Oh, all the time. All the time. And I also get the question, so are they identical?
Except for the testicles and the vagina, yes, they're identical. Everything else is the same except for that part.
Yep. I know. If I had a nickel every time I had that, I could probably pay for their college education.
And that's one of the few rare inside jokes that only parents of boy-girl twins can have.
Yes. Exactly.
And then everyone was like, why would they ask you that? I don't know, but it was you that asked me that. Mm-hmm. They're not. They're identical. Yeah, everywhere except where it counts.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's definitely it's definitely a journey and it's definitely an experience. And but at this point in our lives, I can't imagine it any other way.
Did you have were they planned IVF like ours were, or?
Well, yes and no. They were planned IVF because of my fertility issues from my treatments,
right? And
we already had an older child who also was conceived through IVF, and when we met with the fertility doc, he said, well, this is your last chance, so maybe you should put 2 eggs in. And we said, well, and I asked him, I said, well, what's the likelihood of having twins after you've had a successful IVF pregnancy? And he said, oh, there's no research on it. You should just go ahead and get 2. Well, we put 2 in and we got 2 out.
Well, that's good math, even though they seem to have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Our story was that we had tried naturally, even though I had known that I had no sperm left. And I was very fortunate to have, been reared in my survivorship during the Livestrong era. And that's when fertility for AYA became a thing. So I knew who to talk to. My wife and I were thinking of this. What should we do? Talk to this guy. And this guy had been trained in oncofertility for AYA. So he kind of knew. But again, the question we had was if we implant 2, what are the odds? And it was grim. It was 15% chance of getting 1. That's why you put 2 in. So the odds of getting twins was less, and the odds of getting boy-girl twins was even less. So we hit the fucking jackpot. But it sounds like you kind of didn't expect it, but you got lucky, and we did the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole thing, there's a fair amount of luck that goes along with the medicine and everything else like that. But yeah, because we already had an older child, we already had a toddler in the house, we skipped right over man-to-man coverage, went right to zone coverage.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. So you had an advantage over me. You already knew sort of what to expect if it was 1. And we had no idea what to expect with 2. We had to have these. This was in 2010. So there was barely an internet. They were iPhones didn't do shit. I had to record into a tape deck on a boombox and play this cassette tape white noise for them, propped up on pots and pans and fans blowing in the background. It was a Dexter's Lab meets Rick and Morty to keep them alive while we're trying to sleep.
Sleep, what's that?
I don't know. But all right, so you're going to win this war in terms of how the hell did you sleep with twins and a toddler?
Yeah, I don't know. That first year was definitely a blur because we had 3 kids under 3, all in diapers. I mean, financially, I don't know how we did it. Like, it really, truly is a blur. But here we are now, and my oldest is 14, and the twins are 12, and they're all, knock on wood, healthy and happy kids. And so we did something right.
You did something right, whether you plan to or not. It's a good thing. It's a good problem to have. Like, what the hell do I do with 2 12-year-olds and a 14-year-old?
Yeah. So, I think at this point, they're pretty much raising themselves.
I think that's... So does the 14-year-old take care of the 12-year-olds yet?
No, my girl twin takes care of the boys.
That makes way more sense. So you had testicular cancer.
Yes.
What year?
I was diagnosed 98.
Okay, so we are kind of like Bill Clinton at Survivors. I was the first term, you were the second term.
Yeah.
And my God, what a difference. Like, did you have like AOL CDs and shit back then?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I had, CDs, like I used to steal CDs from my college roommates and to make the mixtapes and all those things, and I prided myself on all the mixtapes that I used to be able to make back in the day.
I ask because I have a friend named Steve Friedman. He worked for the NCI. And we go way back to Livestrong days. He had testicular cancer in 1995. And he founded, I think, was AOL's first and only testicular cancer forum. Which is like, we didn't use those words back then.
Right.
Because I had him on the show. I've known him forever. He's telling me, like, yeah, I used to like do the noise thing. And he was talking to a bunch of guys with testicular cancer on AOL. That's like the first peer support I ever heard of. Did you have anything?
No, I had nothing. And I think, like, similar to you, I was in college. I was in my graduate year of physical therapy school. And the biggest priority at that point is getting through school, like taking my finals and like going to lab and doing all those things. That's all the things you're supposed to do as a 22-year-old grad student. And so that was not on my radar, obviously, at all. And I also think, and I don't know about you, but like that first year, like I was just angry. And so I don't even know if support groups were available at that point, then that I would actually have participated in any of them. Does that make sense?
It does make sense too, because I found that, I didn't really know what I didn't know I needed till at least 10 years later. And I was well past the point of like, I'm okay now, more or less, versus I need help now. But some of the most interesting advice I got while running Stupid Cancer over the years was, this is great to know. I just don't know if I need it now. So I'd rather someone know something is there for them and not need it now than wish they had known about it when they needed it.
Yeah, it's about being a little bit more proactive than being reactive. And I find, from my professional lens that, sometimes, we'll present this information to somebody who's newly diagnosed and they're just overwhelmed. And, it's like the teacher in Charlie Brown, like everything just kind of gets washed out in the beginning. So it is helpful to kind of bring that up, at multiple points and also from different providers too. Like that doesn't necessarily always have to come from, the medical oncologist or the surgeon. Maybe it does come from a social worker. Maybe it does come from another healthcare provider, to kind of reiterate those messages, because you're right. First time, we might hear the first 2 things that are told to us and we don't hear the other 8 that are told to us afterwards.
Were you treated seriously? Like you found a lump or something? Talk me through the process.
Thankfully, I was taken seriously.
You're the one.
What?
You're the one that was taken seriously.
I'm the one. We all remember our day of diagnosis, right? Like I had actually been waiting to get to do anything because, again, 22, and I had just run my first marathon. So I thought that I was
one of those people.
I was one of those. Yes, yes. And and that's the other thing, MZ. Like I didn't drink during college. I was always the designated driver. And I didn't have a family history. So it was never on my radar that this could even be a thing. So when I had symptoms, I just said, oh, well, it'll go away. It's a swollen testicle. It's fine. Like, let me take some Tylenol. And so when I finally got to the hospital, they took one look at me and they're like, oh no, we got to run some tests right now. Like they wouldn't let me leave. Blood work, chest x-ray, ultrasound. And, and then the doctor came in and he's like, you got testicular cancer. And I said, well, I can't deal with this right now. I have finals on Monday and Tuesday.
That hits home with me too. I got to graduate. What's wrong with you? Brain cancer?
Yeah, exactly. We got other things going on right now. So, the oncologist who made the diagnosis, he took me seriously. And then my surgeon took me seriously. He was the one that talked to me about oncofertility. He was the one that said, you need to do sperm banking before we do this other surgery and before you start chemo.
Where were you?
I was, at that point, I was in Rochester, New York. I was at
Okay.
Strong Memorial Hospital. And so I'm lucky. I know I'm lucky, especially at that point in 98, 99, that this doctor was thinking ahead for me, because there was no way that I was thinking that far ahead. And he was the one that said, you got to do sperm banking, because the surgery that I'm about to do might screw up some nerves. And if you're going to have chemo, you might become infertile from that. So we got to do this now. So I was thankfully taken seriously at that point.
Were you in pediatrics or adult? You remember?
Adult.
Okay.
Yeah, I was treated as an adult, and when I had my surgeries, I was up on the adult floor. I think probably because it was testicular cancer and not maybe like a hematologic cancer. So I think that's probably why I was treated as an adult versus a pediatrics.
That's surprising. The reason I was given fertility preservation sort of Miranda rights was because I was in pediatrics at NYU. Mm-hmm. And back in those days, if you're a kid, mm-hmm. and you are of age, post-pubescent, they will tell you to do this. They don't pay for it,
no, of course
but
not.
they tell you to do it.
Yeah.
But for you to be told that it's strong at 22 and 98
mm-hmm.
as an adult patient is very lucky.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm lucky about that. From when it comes to the oncofertility piece about that, I do like to tell this story though about when I moved to chemo and I met with my oncologist. I moved back to Connecticut. I'm from Connecticut, and my insurance company cut me off from any more treatment in New York, and I'm sure we'll get to insurance in a little bit.
Oh, insurance.
Yes. So I ended up having chemotherapy at the hospital, ironically enough, that I was born, and the doctor met with me and he said, listen, this is the protocol. These are the side effects you're going to have. Everything that we've all heard, right? You're going to lose your hair. You're going to be nauseous. Your blood counts are going to drop on all the things. He says, do you have any questions? And I did. I had a legit question. I said, can I run while I'm on chemo? Now, again, MZ, this was 1999.
Right.
Back then, we told our patients, don't move during treatment, right? Like, I'd be curious to hear, like, what kind of exercise recommendations did you get, when you were in the middle of your treatments? Because I got none.
I would say I got none.
Yeah.
Not that I could have done anything during treatment. I was on a bed for 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And same thing. Like I was on bed rest for a couple of weeks when I was in the hospital after my surgeries. Never had physical therapy come see me when I was in the hospital. Never had physical therapy come to me or meet with me when I was in the middle of chemo. And so I had to just figure it out all on my own.
Like, hey, this marathon kid, we should probably not care that he's a marathon kid.
Yes. And interestingly now, they don't give bleomycin anymore unless it's later stages in testicular cancer. And that's what I had. And that's what's messed up my lungs. And so I don't run anymore. Mm-hmm. But if they had that knowledge back in 1999, I don't think that they would have given me the bleo.
I would look at that as a better problem to have today, that we happen to be the guinea pigs for them to know what not to do, because we can care about who the person is first and what's wrong with them second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's, we're definitely more in that direction now than we were than when you and I were diagnosed.
So were you driven to the sperm bank?
No, I drove myself.
Okay, because my mom took me and it was awkward.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that was a little awkward.
Just waiting. Yeah, Mom, I'll be back in a little bit.
Yeah.
Awkward.
Yeah. That's, well, again, it's one of those things that we as AYs, deal with, is like this juxtaposition of, we're trying to be independent, we're trying to be adults, but at the same time, like, we need our parents to help us out with certain things.
Right. And also Gen X AYAs too.
Yes.
90s cancer survivors. Mm-hmm. We're a rare breed. Mm-hmm. But I think we have perspective. I mentioned the AOLCDs back then. I had nothing. You had nothing. There was no peer support. But again, apparently this guy, Steve, had an AOL chat room with some testicular cancer buddies.
Good on him.
It didn't even occur to me to think that there could be someone else I could talk to. What about you?
No. And again, I don't know. Well, I do actually remember that when I was getting chemo, that a social worker did meet with me. And this is just, if this isn't AYA care in a nutshell here, she comes to me and she says, we do have a support group and we'd love for you to come. And I said, am I going to be the youngest one there? She said, probably. Because in the chemo room, I was the youngest one there by 30 years. So these folks don't have anything in common with me, right? Like when you and I got treated, like there's nobody in the room that's as young as we are. And so those folks have already had their families, right? You know, they've got jobs, they've got a mortgage, they've got all those things, and we don't have those things. So we're in a totally different life stage. And so what good is it for me to go to that support group? I'm not going to get anything out of that.
I guess in hindsight, it was good for them to let you know it was there.
Sure.
Think about 8 years after I was diagnosed, I joined the long-term survivorship program at Sloan Kettering. And Dr. Kevin Evinger was running that program at the time. Great man. I found out at that time that there was a young adult cancer support group at Sloan Kettering in 1996, and they didn't tell me about it. The only thing I had at that time was they said there's a group called Gilda's Club. The late Gilda Radner started Gilda's Club. And there was a Gilda's Club on Houston Street that I went to in like 97, like a year later with my dad. And to your point, I was there and everyone was ARP. And I don't know if ARP was, rhetorically, everyone was ARP.
Yes.
I was like, I don't belong here. Nice people. They could have been my mom and my grandpa. So I feel like it was nice to know it was there. Probably could have been given a little more. I mean, you were at least given advance notice that you would be the youngest person there. I was like showing up as like, oh, you cute little, you poor thing. Why are you here? Yeah. So again, all in all, we are giving perspective that the issues we have today are better because we fought for things to be better. And again, they're better with an asterisk. So let's take a break because I want to come back and talk about Wegmans and growing up in upstate New York, being a downstate person. How's that?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, we'll be right back. Among the many things you said we have in common, besides being Clinton cancer survivor, boy-girl twin dads, both AYA long-term, is upstate New York. You went to Ithaca College.
Correct.
I went to Binghamton.
Awesome.
And that is Wegmans Central. And you're from downstate?
No, I'm from Connecticut. So
you're from other state.
Yeah, I'm from the other state. Yes. And so when I got to Ithaca as a freshman, and I was introduced to Wegmans, and I thought, this is the best thing ever. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, we had like Wallbaum's, which was like considered luxury on Staten Island in the 1990s. They're like, what is this Wegmans? But by the way, they've never been a sponsor. I need Wegmans. If anyone's listening from Wegmans, please sponsor my show.
That would be amazing.
Yes. Wegmans was part of my orientation. That's how much they knew that the downstaters would like lose their minds and just enjoy being a matriculated student at Binghamton.
Yeah, I mean, going through Wegmans, it was like, it was like a field day, and just getting all the stuff. And then on top of that, their sandwiches. We would always stop off and get the sandwiches.
So good.
Oh. I mean, I would intentionally go back to Ithaca and Rochester every year to kind of give my talk to to that year's physical therapy class. And I always stopped at Wegmans because I always needed a sandwich from Wegmans.
I didn't know Rochester existed until my roommate happened to be from Rochester. So then I learned about Lake Effect and House of Guitars and White Hots and garbage plates.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, same thing. Like me coming from Connecticut, like I didn't know anything about the Finger Lakes. I didn't know anything about that region. Well, good on you. I mean, isn't Binghamton now like Binghamton University? Aren't you like D1 now or something?
It really is. It's become, I mean, it was a great school back then. It's still a great school. I'm not paid to endorse it. I will for the rest of my life be the biggest Binghamton fanboy. It's a great school. I can't tell my kids to go there. If they get a scholarship, good for you. But I'd love to see them matriculate there if it makes sense for them. But I got to tell you, there's something weird about upstate New York when you're not from upstate New York.
Agreed.
It gives you a lot of perspective.
Yeah, it does. I loved Ithaca. The town of Ithaca, I mean, there's no shortage of hikes, and it's just a really pretty, it's got a cool vibe. And again, I'm like you, I'm an Ithaca apologist. Like, I loved my program. I loved the school. And again, for me, being diagnosed in school, my professors could have very easily said, hey, you got this cancer thing. Like, why don't you take the year off? And instead they said, you've been with this cohort for 4.5 years at this point. You're this close to graduating. We're going to figure it out. So they didn't have to do that. They could have very easily said, come back next year. And,
but they didn't want to be the bad PR university.
No. But
Ithaca College gets rid of cancer kid.
Yeah. Again, though, that was before, Facebook and everything else came out. So they probably would have been okay.
That's true. It would have been all over GeoCities.
Yeah, there you go. So I will defend Ithaca to the end, because they stood by me, and, they helped me graduate on time and be with my cohort, be with my classmates to the end.
Where did the interest in PT come from?
I think the interest in PT initially came from when I was in high school. My grandfather had a stroke, and he was left-handed, and the stroke affected his left side. So, and he was a golfer, and so he golfed lefty. And one of the biggest things for him, and obviously the big things are to be able to walk again and be able to hold a fork and be able to sign your name and all those things, but he wanted to go back to golfing. And so the PTs said, well, we don't know that you're going to have the strength to golf lefty again, so we're going to have to teach you how to golf righty. And so they did. They taught him how to golf righty.
Really?
Yeah, in his like late 60s. And so I saw that, and I said, okay, well, that's very cool. That's a cool profession. And then again, being a runner, like I had my own set of injuries, growing up in high school, and had to go to PT myself. And I said, oh, well, good. So I actually thought, as many people do when they go into physical therapy school, they're like, I'm going to do sports. And then, as I went through my program, I realized that everybody else is doing sports, and sports is fine. Interestingly enough, I don't know if you call it divine intervention or what, with my diagnosis. Like, my diagnosis forced me to push back my last clinical rotation, because we've all got to do these clinical rotations, kind of like how nurses do, to be in the field. And so my last clinical was actually supposed to be at some random hospital in Florida, but instead I got chemo. So Ithaca had to change my rotation, and they had to come up with something else. And they sent me instead to a school system outside of Washington, D.C. And so I was working with kids with special needs. And after that, I was like, are you kidding me? You're going to pay me to play with kids? Sure, I'll do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was actually in the first part of my career, was working in pediatric physical therapy. People have asked me, they're like, would you have gone into oncology physical therapy, which is what I do now? And again, in 98, 99, it wasn't a thing. Mm-hmm. And even if it was a thing, it was still too raw for me to be a part of that. So even if it was an option to go into oncology physical therapy,
you needed some space.
I needed some time. Yes, absolutely. So, but yeah, so that was that's how I got my start in physical therapy, was actually in pediatrics.
My wife is a speech therapist and works with many OTs and PTs. Her best friend is a PT.
Okay. Well, we now have 95 things, 95% of things in common, because my wife's a speech therapist as well.
Get out of here.
I'm serious.
Oh my God.
Yeah. See, it was meant to be.
I'm leaving, folks. Have a good night. That's crazy, Scott. That's absolutely crazy. Let's get into this idea of oncology-related therapy. Because, again, there was speech therapy, there's OT, there's PT, but now there's oncology nutrition, oncology speech therapy, oncology occupational therapy. Help me unpack your perspective on the history of the specialization.
Sure. Again, so when you and I were diagnosed in the late 90s, patients were told, don't move, conserve your energy. And they were essentially told, don't exercise. And again, I didn't know any better, being 22, 23 at that point. And I said I needed to run, because I needed it more for my mental health than I did for my physical health at that point. So I was kind of my own little case study in that exercise actually helped me get through my chemotherapy, and I didn't go completely crazy during the whole thing. And so it was actually really good for me. And then interestingly, so in 2010, the first guidelines on exercise and rehab for cancer survivors came out from the American College of Sports Medicine, But they didn't have...
Wait, the American College of Sports Medicine came up with the first oncology guidelines?
Yes.
That's got to be another story for another show, but I want to hear that. Is there an executive summary on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so you had a lot of leaders in the field at that point. They all got together, but the interesting thing was still, they were taking data from the early 2000s, which there still wasn't a whole lot of data. There wasn't a whole lot of research specific to exercise and rehab for cancer patients and cancer survivors. So what they actually ended up doing was they bastardized the general public exercise guidelines. And they said, well, the general public, everybody needs to go out and do 150 minutes of cardiovascular exercise, and maybe a strength training, would be a good thing. But they didn't have the data. They didn't have enough research to back it up. But then from 2009 to 2018, we had this explosion of research. We had much more research that was out there. Clinical investigators were really interested to see what's going to happen if we actually get these people moving. And lo and behold, they feel better. It decreases their fatigue, it improves their balance, and it helps with their mental health. So when they...
Shocker.
No kidding, right? And so when that group reconvened in 2019 to come up with the updated guidelines from the American College of Sports Medicine, now they actually had research. They had something to stand on. They had a leg to stand on here. And so those guidelines were a lot more specific. And they're really helpful for me as a physical therapist to say, they have guidelines that say if you have cancer-related fatigue, this is the dose of exercise that you should be doing to combat cancer-related fatigue. What I find even more interesting is that they found that if somebody is experiencing anxiety or depression, fear of recurrence because of their cancer diagnosis, we actually have guidelines for that too. And it says we can do exercise, and this is the dose of exercise that will help decrease your anxiety and help decrease your depression, which hopefully then helps decrease your risk of recurrence. And so that's where we are now. And so, from a perspective of what can we do for exercise, it's significantly, it's light years ahead of where it was when you and I were diagnosed.
Well, in the vein of we got lucky by happening to have been told about fertility preservation, are we in a similar situation now where people just have to be lucky to have somebody in their clinic that gives them this prescription, or there happens to be an oncology PT available? Are you cloned everywhere?
Oh, no. And that would be a bad idea, MZ, if I was cloned. I mean, one of me is enough. But to your point, no, there aren't enough physical therapists and occupational therapists and speech therapists that are necessarily trained in that and that have the experience to work with cancer survivors. We're definitely pushing for that. I mean, and we have to take this upstream. We have to start in the physical therapy schools and the occupational therapy schools and the speech therapy schools and educate these students while they're still in school that this is a thing, right? They can do sports PT and they can do pediatric PT, they can do neuro PT, and they can do oncology PT. So we got to start a little bit earlier. We got to move a little bit further upstream there to get them. And I am also seeing too, and this is just my experience over the years, is that some of the newer docs, I think they're getting it in their programs. I think they're getting more exposure to that. And so I'm finding that the newer oncologists, the younger ones that have maybe just got out of school, been practicing maybe 5 years, they're a little more cognizant of quality of life. And so they're probably more apt to refer, try to get that referral in and to connect their patients with rehab and with exercise, maybe versus somebody who, again, was trained maybe 30 years ago when it wasn't a thing.
If someone is interested in going into physical therapy as a career path, at what point do you learn about subspecialties?
You don't really learn about the subspecialties probably until your last semester. I'm lucky enough that I teach an elective at one of the universities in Connecticut. And in their last semester, before they all go on their clinicals, they can take an elective. They can choose an elective to take. And so I teach an oncology elective. And it basically is what I do professionally every day. And so the students, again, they have to show that interest and they have to sign up for it. And again, they all say, we had no idea. We didn't know that this was a thing. And I honestly tell them, MZ, I'm like, 80% of what I do as a professional, 80% of the things that I do as a physical therapist, it's just physical therapy.
Yeah.
It's not magic. I don't have any it's not like Hogwarts where I've got a magic wand or anything.
Right.
It's the 20%. It's the knowing what those drugs do to us.
Yeah.
It's what radiation does to us in the short term and in the long term, right? And now with immunotherapy, it's like, what are immunotherapies doing to our bodies now? What are they doing to our bodies long term? So that way they know what to screen for. They know the questions to ask. They know the things that they need to be cognizant of. So that way they can get these patients moving earlier to try to mitigate those late effects.
So it's embarrassing that it takes as long as it does to prove something you already knew was going to be proven. I work with a group called the Academy of Oncology Nurse Navigators. And basically it's what that is. Oncology nurses who've spun out a specialty in navigating patients, which is like not just like how to live and die and how to be a nurse and do amazing things and do God's work, but how to possibly fight your insurance and how to do that. And here, lo and behold, 10 years later, they save money and they help patients and they live longer and they live better. I can see a role for the oncology physical therapy world in the nurse navigation world too. What do you have a sense of? Is it permeating? Is there an awareness? Is this a nice to have? Are you a loss leader? Where do you fit into clinical care coordination?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I agree with you that, to have at these cancer centers, to have, rehab in collaboration with the nurse navigators, social workers, dietitians, to kind of triage everything, right? I kind of do that a little bit right now where, I'll get a message from our scheduling team and they're like, who should we schedule this person with? And so I'm the one that goes in.
You're the only one.
At this point, yes.
If you get sick, it's gone.
Yeah. So I have to do the chart review, and I got to see what's this patient's diagnosis, and where are they in treatment? Are they in the middle of treatment? Do they still have radiation coming up? Also, where do they live? Like New Haven, Connecticut is not nearly as big as New York City, but our traffic is a pain in the ass. And if you don't live immediately within New Haven, you don't want to come to New Haven. You would much rather get
sponsored by the Travel Tourism Bureau of New Haven.
Yeah, Connecticut just has one travel season, and that's just traffic all the time.
Yeah,
never ends. So if we've got specialists at our satellite clinics, and that person lives more out that direction, then I'll say, don't send them to me in downtown. Send them to my colleague over there at this other clinic, because that clinic is only 5 miles or only like a mile and a half from this patient, versus them having to drive in and deal with one-way parking and one-way streets and parking and all the other things. So again, trying to make it as accessible as possible, right. Which again, I think that's a big thing that the nurse navigators are trying to do, to try to make care as accessible as possible.
One of the funnier things I read about your story when I was doing all my spelunking is the phrase, otherwise healthy. Good enough.
You're still here.
Yeah. But you look great.
On the outside.
Exactly. My dad always likes to say that the secret to life is to never look under the hood.
That's fair.
But otherwise healthy was in your chart. I equate that to what was in my chart. The doctor described my brain tumor as elegant.
Elegant. You had an elegant tumor.
An elegant tumor.
Wow. As opposed to an unelegant tumor?
I had a neurosurgeon on the show a couple of years ago, and I asked him, why do you say elegant? It's like, well, because it's how they describe the physiology. It's like a perfect tumor. I had a perfect tumor, Scott.
Right.
Perfect.
Right, because all tumors are perfect, right?
That's I don't know what's an imperfect tumor, but that's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, last question before the lightning round is you have written about your Italian grandmother, and I just love to have a little backstory on family. First and foremost, Capozza, not the most unobvious last name. Where do your origins come from? Pure Italy? Are you 1,000% Italian?
I'm not 1,000% Italian, but the Capozza is my grandfather's name. He came from southern Italy. But my grandmother, like I referenced in my article, is from northern Italy. She's COC. And so that's actually where I get the blue eyes from. And, before I lost my hair to chemo, I was blonde. And so I had her traits.
Okay.
Versus, my brother and my cousins, they all had the Southern Italian from my grandfather. So when you would have us at a family reunion, like I look like the milkman's kid because my brother and my cousins are all dark skin, dark eyes, dark hair, and here's this blondie with blue eyes. And I'm like, where'd he come from?
So
and I said, no.
Napolitan and the Sicilian, you're competing with each other.
Right. And I said, no, I came from grandma. That's where I get it from.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well done. So at the end of every show, I do a lightning round with my AI companion, and I ask it a couple of questions. I feed it all this information about my guests, along with some opinions I have about my guests or my perceived perceptions and whatever they are. And I ask it the following question. If you were a Netflix series, who would be your pop culture soulmates? And it's not an answer you have to give, but I will tell you what my chat claimed you are. You are Sam Malone from Cheers, charming, athletic, but haunted by past health issues, trying to keep the bar together with humor and grit.
Okay.
John McClane from Die Hard, why not? Stubborn, resourceful, takes the hit, keeps going, never really otherwise healthy. And you are a male version of Murphy Brown, relentless, sharp-tongued professional who refuses to let illness or institutions define her. And I will bolt on, as a father of boy-girl twins, it's more difficult than having a different secretary every episode.
Well, and I love the fact that all three of those characters are from the 80s, all shows that we grew up watching.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point. All right, Scott Capozza, physical therapist at Yale New Haven, doesn't really do it. You're a mensch. You're a great guy. Welcome to being nearly 30 years cancer-free as I enter that club later this year. And my God, good perspectives to have, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Good position to be in.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show. It's a pleasure to see you. And I hope everybody, you ask your hospital if they have an oncology physical therapist on staff. And if they don't, you know who to call.
Out of Patience with Matthew Zachary is a production of Matthew Zachary Worldwide. The executive producer is Matthew Zachary. It is mixed and edited by Kyle Moore. If you like the show, ratings and reviews are always welcome wherever you get your podcasts. If you have guest suggestions or would like to learn more about sponsorship opportunities, email podcast@matthewzachary.com. For more information about Matthew Zachary and Matthew Zachary Worldwide, visit matthewzachary.com.